Good evening, I'm Pinky Webb. Tonight we ask the questions, we tackle the issues, we clarify matters, and we get on point. It's been almost 4 decades since the Filipino people, armed only with their voices, their faith, and their desire for a better future, broke free from the clutches of a dictatorship. EDSA 1, the peaceful uprising of a people, gave much hope and promise. But to this day, many are still clamoring for change, and some believe efforts to distort history are being done, pushing the promise of change made on EDSA 39 years ago further and further away. How do we protect the history of EDSA 1? Let's get on point with public historian and a member of the August 21 movement, Professor Xiao Chua, and former Congressman and human rights advocate Erin Tañada. Gentlemen, pleasure to have you both. Maraming salamat po sa inyong oras.
Thanks for having us.
Makasaysayang gabi po.
Makasaysayang gabi. Maganda yon. 39 years after the historic People Power Revolution. I guess the question is, have Filipinos really forgotten what was fought for 39 years ago? Professor, go ahead.
Well, what I think is that in many ways, many of us had moved on. We might not forget what happened or what we stood for. I do not really believe that, except that sometimes maybe a lot of us blame the problems that happened after EDSA to EDSA. And the expectation was so high. But I still believe that, as you see today, that there was an attempt to minimize a little the importance of people power because they did not make it a holiday, a non-working holiday. There is now, people are now saying that we're going to celebrate this, despite the fact that it's not a holiday.
Congressman, it's good what Professor said a while ago when you said that we are blaming what we had expected that did, basically, I'm paraphrasing, we are blaming EDSA to those expectations that were not met. Do you agree?
Well, I would agree because, as Xiao mentioned, the expectations were high. And the people thought that after matanggal lang, or if the former Marcos Sr. administration is removed, all our problems will be solved. They didn't realize that we had to build blocks in order to make the change happen. And to do that, we had to have structural changes, we had to have new people elected in office, but sad to say, instead of moving forward, we moved back and elected old faces in the 1987 elections.
Did we? Were they old faces in the 1987?
Oh, if you go through who were elected prior to the martial law era, you would see the same face. And then if you go through those who were elected during the Batasang Pambansa period, those who were identified with the Marcos Sr. administration, they were almost the same people who ran in the 1987 elections.
If you were to think of an administration possibly that symbolized, was probably closest to what we wanted to achieve, what was desired of EDSA People Power 1, you can be as biased as you wish, because that's your opinion, right? Which administration would it be?
I would like to pick the Fidel V. Ramos administration. I mean, notwithstanding its faults, FVR, who was, of course, general for many years for the dictator, actually, in many ways, atoned and made his whole lifetime an advocacy to promote people empowerment. So not just people power as a movement, but people empowerment when it comes to the economy, and also a lot of bridge making. You know, remember at that time there was what we call the Rainbow Coalition. And so you reach out to your enemies. Unlike today, wherein, you know, if you have enemies with the political opponent, you really destroy that enemy. And so the message of people power in you are magnanimous in victory. You win, but you reach out to your enemies. Bipartisanship, or whatever you call it, is lost to us many times after EDSA.
Why?
So,
Why do you think?
Why? Because sometimes we forget that we're actually brothers. Because of the heat of the politics, because we actually have no, in a way, righteousness. We have sometimes too much righteousness that we're the only right people, that we do not actually listen to our fellow men. We might be wrong, they might be right, but we do not do that. We have our own echo chambers, especially now with the algorithms of the internet. And so the purpose of nationhood, of people empowerment, listening to each other, I think we're
lost
losing
that
it little
somehow.
by little. Yeah.
What about you, Erin?
Well,
Which
I-
administration?
I will be biased, but I would say the Ramos administration and the Pinoy administration, I think, were the two administrations that stabilized the country from the period that they were, how would you say, they succeeded or they were successors of problems. No?
And of course, the Cory administration, because that was right after madami pang inaayos nung mga panahon na
And
yun.
maraming coup d'etat. Remember, she went through so many coup d'etats, and that's why the Cory administration could not really take off, despite the goodwill that other countries recognize and acknowledge what the Philippines contributed to the world politics after EDSA. Still, there were people in our country who wanted to bring her down.
Sabi ni Professor Xiao, we've not forgotten, but we've just moved on. Pero paano naman yung diwa ng EDSA? I guess what I want to find out is, nagkulang ho ba si EDSA? Nagkulang ho ba yung mga tao pagkatapos ng EDSA? O tayo ba nagkulang bilang taong bayan ng Pilipinas?
Laging we blame ourselves, the ordinary people, to what happened after. But remember na, the administrations after really tried their best. So for example, Corazon Aquino facilitated the new constitution, the 1987 constitution. The main problem of the Marcos administration is centralization. You center the power of all government to one man, which is not democracy, definitely. But Cory really wanted to, he was dictator for 1 year, remember? She was dictator. Cory Aquino was dictator for 1 year. But some people would have said, you should have been dictator longer to fix the problems. But no, she doesn't want. She just wants to give the power back to Congress. We want to give it back and decentralize government. And so there were right moves, but the problem was, so for example, in the 1987 Constitution, the party list was instituted so that there would be more representation of sectors, real marginalized sectors that would have helped us with pro-poor legislation. What happened? It's always the elites, the powerful, who used the gains of the 1987 Constitution and subverted it to their own para sa kanilang sariling kaginhawaan. So parang I do not want to really blame the people. It's really many of the leaders that we have trusted that subverted the gains of EDSA for themselves.
So it's the government officials.
The elected government.
Yeah, the elected government officials.
Yes. And this is one of the reasons why we always go back and say, sayang yung gains dahil yung mga pangarap ng ating taong bayan hindi tinupad ng mga pinuno natin, no? Yung pinaglaban at pinagsakripisyohan ng ilang tao, no? Parang in-install lang natin sila uli at they threw the gains out the window.
But if you say that, Congressman, ganun din po ang dapat na maging blame natin dun sa mga naging pangulo. If that is the argument that you're going to raise, we have to blame the late President Cory Aquino. We're going to have to blame FBR. We're going to have to blame Pinoy.
I
Di
think-
ba? We're gonna have to
I think-
blame GMA.
I think if we're going to be fair, everyone carries a burden of not doing what the people wanted to happen. So the variations will be based on ano yung na-achieve ng bawat administrasyon. Pero again, babalikan natin, meron bang pagbabago sa buhay ng mga mahihirap kung ikukumpara sa bawat administrasyon? And I think the answer there is very minimal. Very minimal. We still face the same problems. No? Everyone wanted the farmers' livelihoods to increase. There was the land reform program. Okay, that was good. But at the end of the day, binigay mo nga yung lupa sa mga mahihirap,
Hindi mo naman binigyan ng
ng tulong.
Tulong.
Oo. Ngayon, kung pag-aaralan natin, ito yung mga nagiging problema. Parang hindi long-term masyado yung pag-aayos ng...
But if that is the problem that the people are seeing, or even people like you see, isn't that something that government officials should already be trying to take care of?
This is where self-interest comes into play.
So nangingibabaw po yun.
Yes. And ito yung nagiging problema. Sabihin natin, ask somebody kung importante yung usapin tungkol sa political dynasty.
Yeah.
And ito yung issue na alam natin na isa sa mga simbolo kung saan, no, pardon the word, kaswapangan na ng mga pamilya yung posisyon.
Wag na ho kayo mag-pardon.
O di, sumaswapang na talaga.
Hindi, but that's where I wanted to go. Thank you for leading me there.
Yes.
Because that was part of the 1987 Constitution,
Exactly.
di ba? But there was no enabling law.
Yes.
What I'm trying to say is Congress, and my dad was there,
Yep.
he was there, I mean, for transparency. Why did the succeeding Congress not do this enabling law?
In fairness
Hindi ba ikaw din?
in fairness
Nandun
to
ka
your
din?
father and my father, who were part of the Senate, no, at that time, they would pass an anti-political dynasty bill. The problem is, the House does not pass the same. And remember, when you make a law, you have to have both
course.
chambers working as
May
one.
pag-asa pa kaya yun?
Parang wala ako. Kasi sila yung nakikinabang sa kawalan ng enabling law na yan eh. So, kaya nga, actually, we're stuck. 39 years, that's already history. But because there are political families and political dynasties, we're like stuck.
Hindi ho ba sayang? It is part of the 1987 Constitution. Obviously, the wisdom of the law is there. They basically just said, Congress, make an enabling law, and yet Congress didn't do it. But what I'm saying is the Congress immediately after the 1987 Constitution should have done this.
Yes, and I think the Senate tried. The House maybe did not even get it out of committee level. I'm sure there were congressmen there at the time in the 1987 Congress. Former Senator Raul Roco was part of Congress. The House of Representatives. There was the late EDSA Lagman, who was also a member of the House. And they would be filing. Problem is, it gets stalled
Natalo.
along the way. Parating natatalo sa House.
Tapos, ito pa yung nakikita kong problema eh. There's the spirit of the law that the fathers of the nation through the Constituent Assembly created this constitution. Pero, ang nangyayari, natatalo siya ng technicality of the law. So, for example, one good example is the party list system. The party list system would have been, ito, napatunayan natin to, Sir Erin, yung sa reproductive health law,
Okay.
that a lot of the party lists were actually the reason why na pasa yung party list, yung batas na yun. No?
Are you talking about the responsible
Parenthood,
and
responsible parenthood.
reproductive health law?
Yes. Pero ang nangyayari ngayon, dahil because of a Supreme Court decision that says kahit na sino pwede nang...
Your representative does not have to come
Be a
from a marginalized
marginalized
sector.
Not
Yeah.
open the floodgates.
Wala na.
Yeah.
So, puro na ngayon sila mga political dynasties.
Baka pwede
din.
ulit tanungin ngayon, baka magkaroon ng ibang
Interpretation, di ba?
Pwede,
or
pwede.
decision, di
Oo,
ba?
pwede,
All right,
pwede.
so going back to EDSA, again, 39 years later. I guess what's also important is that what can be done now to keep the spirit alive? Because there are going to be a lot of, well, a number of activities tomorrow. In fact, a lot of schools have suspended their classes. I wanted to ask you both if this is a first in a while. Dahil sa totoo lang, tuwing holiday ang EDSA People Power, talagang umaalis po yung tao. Nagbabakasyon po yung tao. That includes me. So let's talk about that after the break. More of our discussion with Professor Xiao Chua and attorney Erin Tañada in a moment. Stay tuned. This is On Point.
Bawat anggulo ng bawat issue.
Nagsagawa ng mock polls ang Commission on Elections sa 30 barangay sa bansa kaninang umaga.
Bawat detalye ng mga napapanahong pangyayari.
Pinaiimbestigahan sa Kamara ang hindi pa rin nababayarang reimbursements ng mga ospital sa PhilHealth.
Tuloy-tuloy na ihahatid kahit hanggang Sabado at Linggo.
At yan ang ating weekend agenda ngayong Sabado. Ako si George Cahiles. Sa bawat issue may anggulo at ang balita may agenda.
Good morning, I'm Mikey Orata and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Some good news for the economy. The Philippine financial system's resources continue to grow. Thousands gather in Washington to protest massive government reforms under President Donald Trump. Airfares are set to rise in March, but by how much? And that's it for Business 360. I'm Mikey Orata. Keep it here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel.
Welcome back. You're watching On Point. Still with us, Professor Xiao Chua and attorney Erin Tañada. Before we go to the activities tomorrow, another thing that I wanted to ask you both is that, well, 39 years later, after ousting Ferdinand E. Marcos, we now have the son, PBBM, as president elected almost 3 years ago. What happened? How do how would you summarize it if somebody asked you, ano nangyari? Didn't you oust the father and then 36 years later, you elected the son?
Well, I would look at it from the point of view that democracy works.
Yeah.
The fact that it took a democratic process to put back the son of a dictator shows that elections work. Now, of course, there are a lot of comments whether there was cheating involved, whether it came from one ISP provider, but still, the process is there. And if we would look at the record of President Bongbong right now compared to the record of President Duterte, I think he is doing much better than President Duterte.
Ako naman, parang what I'm thinking was, all the frustrations that were, all the years after, remember, that's 39 years,
39
okay?
years.
It's a very long time. We're lumped into the battle between Dilawan and the BBM and the DDS and all of that, which was so simplistic. Pero the framing, ang galing kasing mag-frame na, for example, nung camp ni Duterte at ni BBM. Remember that Filipinos respond to messages of kaginhawaan. And when they said, kill all the criminals, I will kill them all. Giginhawa buhay nyo. You already have the Filipino. So, sometimes yun ang kailangan matutuhan din nating forces of democracy and human rights, that we should not just talk about human rights for human rights' sake. Just human rights is important. It's not just that. That human rights lead to kaginhawaan. That the respect of human dignity will lead to a better life for us. At yun ang mas marami pang kwento na dapat nating pinoproject.
Pero bakit naging ganon? Bakit naging yung dilaw, which was a symbol of democracy, hindi ho ba? Ngayon ay parang, to some they describe it as it was not good or palpak.
Inefficient.
Inefficient, oo.
Well, na-demonize. Na-demonize ang dilaw. And of course, because of the false narratives that were injected during that period, the last 2 years of the Pinoy administration, whether the communications people were able to inform the public of the gains, wala, natabunan eh.
Inaamin mo from there, nagkaroon talaga ng pagkukulang during the last years of the late Pinoy.
In terms of informing the
Yes.
people of the gains. No?
Ako naman parang, I would own up that some of the leaders that identified themselves with us were not as good. Di ba? Kailangan anuhin natin yun. Let us admit that. Na nasisi talaga lahat. Yung, kumbaga, sa political framing kasi, whether that is correct or not, napakadaling i-frame na gano'n, battle ito ng kapalpakan at ng inefficiency versus yung effective sila, gano'n. Ito yung mga sinasabi nila. Pero again, when you look at how history unfolded in the past 39 years, hindi naman siya gano'n kasimple. Diba? Except that, when you have messages like that is when talaga napakahirap magturo ng kasaysayan. Kasi kami halimbawa, bilang mga guro, we want to teach everything. We want to tell people all of these administrations. Pero kapag malapit na yung end of term, doon na lang napapag-usapan lahat yung presidente. So, may ganyan din tayong problem. So, ang dami-daming presidente niyan. So, ang dami-dami. At lagi nga natin sinasabi, telling that stories of the presidents are not enough. We have to tell the stories of the people themselves under these presidencies. So, babalansihin mo yan. And now, napakahirap. Pero alam nyo, ang ganda kasi when we are able to do it, talaga nagre-respond talaga ang mga estudyante.
Pero yung pagturo ho ba sa eskwelahan, kung ano nangyari noong 1986, yung EDSA People Power, is it being taught proper? Is it being taught? Is it being taught properly? Is it being taught enough?
Okay. Sa curriculum natin, I'm part of the consultants of the Department of Education for the Matatag curriculum, which is being implemented now. Yung i-implement, maganda po ang latag, no? Very pro-democracy, very pro-human rights. Nagkakaproblema lang tayo kasi, yes, the curriculum guides may be okay, pero yung libro, babantayan pa natin yan. Yung pag dumating na yung mga libro, and then, may libro ka nga, maganda nga ang curriculum guide mo, pero pag yung teacher hindi na training, doon nagkakaroon, yung luma pa rin yung tinuturo. So, tapos yung mga papasok namin dyan yung biases ng mga nagtuturo. Diba? So, yun, lahat ng yun, kasamang titignan doon sa kung paano ina-assess, tinuturo itong people power natin.
I see. All right. Schools, we were talking about,
Yes.
there's a lot of schools. Please, are there more schools now that decided we are going to declare no school or suspend classes, or we're just not going to go to class tomorrow? I think it is PUP. There were PUP students who are going to do a walkout tomorrow
Yes.
at 1 p.m. But of course, there are other schools, of course, na hindi ho talaga papasok. Let's just put this in. This was in UP. There was a story that the UP Diliman Student Council chairperson by the name of Sean Latorre, very unhappy with the decision of yung pamunuan ng UP. Let's listen to what he said.
Nito ng quote-unquote alternative learning day at pagpasa ng burden sa local units, sa chancellors para sa kung anong gagawin sa araw na yon is actually quite spineless, if I might say. It's spineless and walang pakundangan sa character na dapat ina-uphold ng pamantasan.
Quick reaction, Professor Xiao.
Kasalanan kasi ng Lasal, bakit siya nanguna? Ang expectation ng lahat, di ba? The state university is going to do it. But Lasal,
Go Lasal.
and then Lasal, and then the Catholic schools, of
The
course.
SEAP.
Because a lot of the legacy of yung Catholic Church is also part of EDSA Revolution, di ba? Pero yun na nga, well, I don't know, kasi si President Gigil, kilala ko naman yan, kilala din naman siya na, you know, he actually thinks of, you know, the best interest of the university. Pero yun na nga, no, siguro, I don't know, naglalaro siguro dahil state university pa rin sila, di ba? Pero hindi kasi UP talaga ang,
UP pa rin.
di ba?
No?
UP talaga
UP
ang
is
namumuna
UP. Siguro, just to add context to this, it's because, of course, this is the second year, no?
Yes.
Congressman Erin, that the President declared it a special
Working.
holiday. In fact, I had to, you know, really try to understand ano bang special working holiday. Basically, you work.
You
And
work.
it's not a holiday. That's
There's
just
a
what it means.
recognition of the importance of the day.
Exactly. Yun lang
That's
po yung
it.
nakasulat doon.
Pero yun nga yung sayang kasi, dati, holiday ang EDSA, lumilipas lang naman siya. Sometimes, nobody even talks about
Yeah,
it.
true.
Pero
No.
when you make it a working holiday and you don't make it special, people will really talk about it.
About it.
Mas pag-uusapan pa siya. Mas nagkakaroon ng, bakit hindi siya holiday? Tapos
Oh, ngayon
eto
napag-usapan.
na.
Napag-usapan.
So, what do you think prompted these schools and these activities to go full on
Well, I
tomorrow?
think because of revisionism, the attempt to distort history is one of the reasons why there are schools now asking the students to really go deeper and try to understand what EDSA really meant for the
Yes.
country, no? And how maybe they have to have these conversations with their parents. If their parents were part of EDSA, did you go? What did you do? Did you stand, no, for democracy at that time? These are the necessary conversations that I think students of today want to find out because they're at a loss trying to figure out, navigate, ano bang issue ng esensya ng demokrasya, anong esensya ng kalayaan dito sa ating bansa. So ito yung kailangan malaman ng mga estudyante ngayon.
At ang nakakatuwa dyan, di ba, some of them are Catholic schools, very, very careful not to let their students go to rallies. And then suddenly you see all these announcements that say, we're encouraging you, we have vehicles for you to come, no?
Yeah.
So go to the rallies. Parang wow, di ba?
Organized na, ano
Di
pa?
ba?
Organized by the clergy. So there might be a big mobilization tomorrow, and
Yes.
I think what is important that the students who go tomorrow try to understand from the people that are there, no, try to talk to them and try to learn ano ba nangyari nung EDSA? Bakit tayo lumaban sa diktador, no? Ano yung mga sakripisyo na ginawa ng maraming tao nung panahon ng EDSA? Pero kailangan hindi lamang EDSA ang pinag-uusapan, kundi yung mga nangyari bago nagkaroon ng EDSA.
Activities that led to that too.
That is very
Everything, the
important.
time rather, that
Yeah.
led to the EDSA one. Do you think there was a problem, just looking back now, na nagkaroon kasi ng EDSA 2 at EDSA 3? Yun. Kahit pa paano ho ba nawala ang significance ng EDSA 1 because of the succeeding ones?
Dati kasi, di ba, pag sinabi mong people power, you only think of 1986, which was a real, even if you don't say it is, it's a real revolution, ano? Kasi talagang may pagbabago naman sa lipunan. The problem was, of course, we already had the 1987 Constitution when EDSA DOS happened. And then they did not invoke a revolution. They just said it's a constitutional process. So ano nangyari? It felt like, although I was part of the sympathizers of EDSA DOS, eventually parang it felt like it was mob rule. Parang, of course, what happened after that, all the controversies of the Arroyo administration, despite her, being, intelligent and competent, parang nadismaya yung tao. Parang, where do you now draw the line? People power or mob rule or extra constitutional processes? Kasi ngayong may constitution na tayo, dapat ang sinusunod natin for the removal of a person in office is the constitution, is impeachment, di ba? So, yun, kailangan gumana yung mga proseso natin.
Where the trial of the Senate shall forthwith proceed.
Forthwith
Isa na naman
proceed.
problema yun.
Oo.
Shall at hindi
Shall.
may yun, May yung discretionary, shall yung utos eh.
Yeah, so hindi pwede. Okay. So, iba pang usapan yun dahil actually pwede natin pag-usapan dahil it's in the Supreme Court at wala naman sa, ikaw, attorney ka nga
At
pala.
abogado.
Delikado ka. Sub judice ka. All right. So, next is siguro, maybe just a last question. You mentioned we also have to remember, the events that led to EDSA People Power
Yes.
1, no? Do you find anything possibly similar to the events that led back then to maybe just even a faint similarity to what is happening now?
Well, the conditions are practically the same. You have poverty, you have hunger, maybe extrajudicial killings, but not as pronounced, maybe as before, during the time of President Duterte or other administrations. institutions now are being challenged, no, in terms of following the rule of law or following who put you in that position. So these are things that, again, are challenging institutions and people on how to view the situation we are in right now.
That's the last question. How do we keep the spirit of EDSA alive, Professor Xiao?
Well, the only thing to keep it alive is to talk about it, talk how we can crystallize the spirit of EDSA through the way we vote, through the way that we use our institutions to exact accountability to our officials, at kung paano natin gagamitin yung mga batas natin to actually minimize the control of the elite. All throughout our history, from the Malolos Congress to EDSA to what happened, na parang sinasubvert nila lahat ng gains ng taong bayan. All we have to remember is that people power is the people's victory. Tapos, ang kaunti-kaunti na nga lang ng victory natin, gusto pa nating tanggalin sa sarili natin, gusto pa nating i-reject. So, I really do hope na, parang may maganda yung tanong sa akin ng isang teacher Nalilito na daw siya kanina, sabi niya, bakit yun daw mga dating makademokrasya, pumanig na daw sa mga hindi makademokrasya. Tapos, ano yung nangyari, sabi niya, nalilito na rin ako. Sabi ko, huwag kang malilito. Dahil yung mga personalidad, interest nila ang kanilang iingatan. Ang tagumpay ng EDSA ay tagumpay ng bayan. At dapat, lagi tayong gigising uma-umaga para yung tagumpay na yan ay mananatiling tagumpay pa rin natin sa kabila ng ating mga problema.
Congressman Erin, go ahead.
Well, at the end of the day, I think, again, EDSA will be always something to look up to.
Yes.
No? It will never be a failure. No. And again, it will again bring out the people and bring out, ano ba talagang pinaglalaban uli natin? Demokrasya, etc., laban sa korupsyon. Yung korupsyon ngayon, may korupsyon noon, pareho pa rin. So, ito yung mga kailangan sabihin natin sa taong bayan, may pag-asa pa tayo Yes. Ang kailangan, tumayo lang tayo, wag na natin titignan kung iilan lang tayo, pero ipaglaban natin yung tama.
Professor Xiao Chua and Congressman Erin Tañada, thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure you both will be busy tomorrow.
Opo. Mabuhay ang kapangyarihang bayan.
Mabuhay.
And that's On Point. Join us again tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel. I'm Pinky Webb. Thank you for watching.